Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Influential Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Duncan, and as a mom and lawyer, I want to be a cheerleader for moms who don't want to give up their own goals and dreams. Around here, we celebrate moms who are making a difference and talk about ways to juggle work, motherhood, goals, faith, self-care, and more. I'm so glad you're here. The only filters we use around here are coffee filters, so pour yourself a cup and enjoy the show. On today's episode of Influential Motherhood, I'm here with Miranda Anderson, who is a podcaster at Live Free Creative, and she also has a great blog, and she's the author of the book More Than Enough: How One Family Cultivated a More Abundant Life Through a Year of Practical Minimalism, which I love. I love that tagline, Miranda, and I cannot wait to hear a little bit more about your story through that process.
Thank you.
Miranda, you're welcome. Miranda's a mom of 3 and is an amazing resource online for women who are looking to get their life and soul back. And she's going to talk with us today about what enough looks like. And I think that probably comes in large part from this story about your family and this year of practical minimalism. So welcome to the show, Miranda.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So glad to have you. So let's start out just so our audience can get to know you if they don't already know you. Tell us a little bit more about you and your family and kind of how you got to this point in your work and career with Live Free Creative, and then we'll start talking about what enough looks like.
Great. Yes. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. I'm excited to be here. I am a mom of 3. I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old. I also have a 3-year-old dog and 4 1-year-old chickens.
Oh my goodness.
are like some of my favorite creatures.
I love that.
My family and I live in Richmond, Virginia, and my pathway, as I'm sure many of your listeners as well, has been a little bit windy to get to where I am. I studied nursing in college. I graduated and worked full-time as a registered nurse, diabetes educator. Okay. And what I took from that job was that I love to teach. And so as my children came, I worked, from full-time, then down to part-time, and then I was working PRN when my 3rd child was born. Throughout that whole time, even before I started nursing school, I had been a blogger as a hobby, back in 2007, 2008. Yep. Everyone had a blog.
The peak of the blogging days.
Yeah, the blog roll, and you'd go through and see what all your friends were up to.
I kind of miss those days.
I know. It really was like a really fun time on the internet, I think. We had moved around a little bit for school, and so it was a really fun way to keep in touch with people and also to share. I've always been a creative person. I grew up doing crafts and sewing and all different types of DIY projects. My dad's a contractor, and so I grew up sort of always having the tools and materials around to create whatever I could dream up. And so that came out in my blog as well with my young family as we were sort of making do as with our life as we were traveling around and finishing school and doing some jobs. And there came a point where my nursing career was feeling a little bit less fulfilling and also really time-consuming. Mm-hmm. And my blog was feeling really inspiring and was also something that was very flexible because I could do it from home during nap times. I carried it with me wherever I went. Every time we moved, I had to find a new nursing job where I didn't have to find a new website. It was all just there online.
Right.
So I made a shift in 2013 and I quit nursing and I transformed my hobby blog into a career, into a job. So I started taking on sponsorships and working as a blogger, which was really fun. It was really fun to turn something that had been a passion and just like a really consistent part of my life into a practical way to make money for my family as well. Mm-hmm. And so that then stemmed to now I have the podcast. I've had several different iterations of shops to supplement the blog, whatever kind of we were talking about or sharing at the time. There are a series of like sewing types of things and a lot of handmade goods. And right now I have a little shop that just sells some items with our family's motto, less stuff, more adventure on it, intentional living type products. Mm-hmm. And then we... So I guess 2014, 15, in 2017, and this is where the book came into play. we'll talk more about this, but just I made the decision, my husband and I made the decision to pause our consumption for a year. So we decided to not buy any non-consumable goods for the year of 2017 and to experiment with minimalism in a new way. I had always been somewhat of a minimalist, just by nature, and definitely a creative minimalist. I feel like people who grow up using what they have around them to make things, that, that just is kind of, I was more prone to DIY than I was to BUY. So that...
Oh, I like that. DIY.
Right? So then, so we had this year-long experiment, and it was really interesting and really cool. And of course, I was blogging, and so I shared about it on my blog, and it really resonated with people. And so about halfway through the year, as I had been sharing it, and I realized that there was more of this, that I wanted to tell the whole story, and that the best way for it to reach a wide audience was through a book rather than just a series of blog posts. And so this year in July, the book came out. I know the subtitle's a little bit of a mouthful, How One Family Cultivated a More Abundant Life Through a Year of Practical Minimalism. But I assured my editor if it fit on the cover that it would work. It had all the words that I wanted it to say. And more than a chronicle of our experience, the book is a reflection of the principles and values that it instilled in our family that either we needed and wanted to encourage more, both in ourselves as adults and parents and in our children, and also some new ones that it kind of awoke for us that we didn't realize we hadn't, we thought that some things were important that we hadn't really been living. And so it kind of brought all of that stuff to the surface. So that leads us to where we are now.
I love it. Oh my goodness. I can't wait to hear more about this. So, you are, what I love about you is that you are busy. I mean, just, I was watching your stories today, and your, sewing projects and releasing podcasting episodes. And now you're here with me tonight, and it's 9:14 p.m. on the, as we're recording. But you're so busy, but you're so full of joy. And I would suspect that as we will hear and learn more, that comes from what you learn and the values that were either renewed or instilled in your family through that year, that part of that, sense of joy really comes from this, practical minimalism that y'all found a way to, to live and to thrive in. So as we kind of start talking about what enough looks like and the journey that your family has had, you said that in 2017, your family decided to kind of embark on this journey. But what was that fire that was lit under you? Where did this come from that together y'all made this decision to